Hello, everybody. Welcome one and all to this live stream webinar provided to you by HASSE. We're coming live to you from Houston, Texas. And my name is Alina, and I will be your host for today. As I've mentioned, this webinar is brought to you by HASSE, which stands for Houston Association for Space and Science Education. And at HASSE, we make it our mission to inspire young adults and youth, people like yourselves, to pursue careers and degrees in STEM-related fields. Now, as I've mentioned already, my name is Olina, and I am a group manager for HASSE. Hi, everybody. I can see all of your comments already. Great. Thank you all for joining us today. I see many people from all over the world. Excellent. I'll get back to that just in a second. Let me tell you a little bit more about myself. So me being a group manager means that maybe some of you already know me. I work with HASSE on bringing you guys to Houston and to inspire you to pursue careers and academic degrees in STEM-related fields. STEM obviously means science, technology, engineering, and math. So those are all future really important fields that we will need, because you guys are all the Mars generation. And today we have with us one of you practically, but I'll get to that a little bit later. Now, as you know, this is a webinar, but it's not a singular event. It is a series. We've already had a webinar a few weeks ago where our guest was Mr. Christopher Texler, a really young, inspiring and inspired young man who has his own rocket company and who taught us something more about how rockets actually work. Today, we have somebody you definitely already know and love. Miss Alyssa Carson will be our guest for today, and we will meet her later. You guys will have a chance to ask her some questions, interact with her. All right, so without any further ado, let's welcome our guest for today, the inspiring young woman, Miss Alyssa Carson. So say hello to Alyssa, everybody. Hi, hello, Alyssa.
Hello.
Thank you for coming in, and thank you for joining us here today. It's great to see you.
You too.
Excellent. Now, as you can see, many people are so excited to see you. Many of them have already been sending questions, even though it's maybe a little too early for that part quite yet. But without any further ado, let's just continue. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. So as I've mentioned earlier, you said that you've decided to become an astronaut at the very young age of 3 years old. Now, 16 years later, you're still pursuing that dream, and you are, I would say, pretty close to achieving it. Now, was there at any point a thought when you would think that, you doubted your decision, perhaps? Have you ever reconsidered your career path? And if so, how did you deal with that moment of doubt?
Yeah, I mean, similar to most kids when they're jumped around between different career, possibilities to do in the future. It could change weekly. I'd want to do something else. But kind of the way I always thought about it was that, let's say I was into being a doctor at the time. I would always say, I'd be an astronaut, go to Mars, come back, and then be a doctor or whatever it was. For some reason, I always had wanting to be an astronaut as first and then doing whatever I would come up with. So I kind of kept being an astronaut pretty close to the top. But I mean, definitely throughout the stuff, there's definitely been struggles and trying to keep up. First of all, it's pretty just in general schooling curriculum and that kind of thing. But just staying focused in your dream and staying passionate about it.
Excellent. Now, you've mentioned that you even briefly considered becoming a doctor. Would that perhaps stop you from being an astronaut in any way?
So I mean, that was like an idea of like something that I was, jumping between when I was younger. I'm not necessarily on that path still today. So I'm currently working on studying astrobiology to be one of the specialists for the mission. So I mean, of course, everyone's going to have some medical experience for the mission to Mars. We are going to be a medical officer on the mission to Mars, all those things. But most likely my role will be more towards the research science and just experiment side of the mission.
Excellent. Yeah, so this is something that I think we would all probably need to point out, that astronauts are not just astronauts. They also have other professions such as doctors, researchers, other kinds of scientists, engineers, and so on. So anybody can go into space. It just depends on how really determined they are. And you seem to have a lot of determination. Now, you achieved so many different goals already, and you have taken part in so many really important events. For example, MER 10, to name one. You attended that at the age of 12, am I right?
Yeah, that was around 12, yeah, in DC.
So you were the youngest panelist then, is that true?
Yeah, the other panelists were a few PhDs, also an astronaut was on the panel. So yeah, definitely a lot younger than some of the other panelists.
Now, being the youngest, would you say you ran into any difficulties, or did you feel in any way uncomfortable surrounded by all these experts and, as you've mentioned, the real astronaut, many engineers?
Yeah, I mean, definitely at a lot of things I've done, definitely been the youngest in many different situations. So it's definitely been something that I've encountered pretty frequently. For example, like at this MER 10 panel, obviously being 12, not really having that much of a stance, but being able to still be able to like stand up there at that time and just kind of share a little bit of my story, but mainly just being able to contribute about my thoughts and you know, how excited I would be for a mission to Mars and provide insight along with PhDs was pretty incredible just to be there, but it was a really awesome experience, and it was super cool because afterward, like, we did Q&A and everyone was asking me all these questions, and so it was super cool to kind of like just be in that moment and yeah, just kind of be there with those people, have these people so interested and supportive of my dream, which, you know, this was kind of right at the beginning stages, so it really helped in propelling my dream.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you for that. That sounds intimidating, but fascinating too. And it's great that actually you were the one who got all these questions they were asking instead of, you know, I would probably think it would be the other way around. But that's amazing. Now, that's not the only thing. You also, at such young age, you already have so many different certificates and achievements behind you. For example, you have suborbital certification. You've also attended all of the NASA space camps, and you have what they call a NASA passport. You are a really, really busy young woman. You also study in a university full time. You work with BMW and Nike. And I just really need to know, how do you fit all that in only 24 hours a day? Because I feel like you must be on some kind of a different schedule. How do you even manage to balance your personal life and all of these amazing activities?
Yeah, you know, it's funny you say that because, like, we always joke that, like, I'm on March time, so we just get, like, an extra 30 minutes every day to squeeze everything in, and it just kind of, you know, builds a long time. But, I mean, for the most part, it's really just about time management. But, I mean, I do feel like I have had, you know, like, plenty of time, I don't know, I guess, like, to relax or just, like, not be necessarily busy all the time. I do think that there has been like a pretty good balance. So, I mean, for example, growing up and all through school and high school and stuff, you know, I tried to keep on top of work. And then if I were to travel, I would also do stuff while I would travel. But yeah, I kind of just always kept a pretty good connection between like my teachers and me to kind of keep everything flowing well. And then, yeah, trying to make the most out of all the opportunities that came by. A lot of what I've done has kind of been over the summer and, you know, during that time where I was off because there was, you know, so much time there to be able to go anywhere, do anything. Just to also stay in school as much as possible, but even during the school year, trying to bounce around and just trying to see, you know, what's most important at that moment and like trying to decide which to do. But yeah, it's just been kind of a crazy ride of always going and always doing something. But at the same time, it's been really fun to kind of do that and travel so much and being able to experience so many different things.
That sounds amazing. And all of that in just a few years, basically. I really don't know how you have time for all of that. And it's great to hear that even at such a young age, you have achieved so many different things. And this is exactly what we would like our students to, you know, to be inspired to do and pursue. same kind of really busy but very rewarding kind of line of work and study. Now, you've attended all of these different programs and all of these different space camps. I was wondering, how do you know which ones to choose? And perhaps, do you have any mentors that help you and navigate you towards, the correct courses to take or the correct camps to attend? How do you decide?
Right. Well, yeah. So, kind of like what you've said, like there's no really one way to become an astronaut. There's not anything in particular that you have to do. So I think that's, something really cool because as far as like camps go, you can really just kind of do what you're interested in. So, really growing up, it was mainly what I was interested in, what looked cool. So for example, space camp was something I ended up loving it, so I kept going. Doing, some other camps, if it was similar to what I was interested in, then I would do it. So it's definitely a lot about just looking, figuring out what kind of career path you want to go down, and then seeing what all is available. For example, I'm sure if you want to take more of like a medical approach to wanting to become an astronaut, I'm sure different levels of camps that you could go to that may be more focused on medicine than what space camp might be. And so, yeah, it's definitely just being able to look in your local area, kind of look what's around, see what kind of possibilities are out there, even just finding someone who has a similar career and just asking them questions. So it's just kind of exposing yourself to what is around. But yeah, I've definitely had several people who have kind of helped me and given me some advice, and like I said, like nothing's necessarily necessary to actually become an astronaut, but doing things like getting a pilot's license and having some of those experiences definitely could be beneficial later on in the astronaut selection process.
Excellent. You've mentioned some people who have helped to motivate you. Do you mind mentioning perhaps who was your role model, who inspired you?
Yeah, there's been several people along the way. A big one was Sandra Magnus, who is an astronaut. She did several shuttle missions, so she was a pretty big inspiration for me when I was younger. She kind of motivated me that it didn't really matter my age when I was starting, that I could still actually follow my dream. Also, some people from NASA that have been super helpful. John Conley, who I did meet on that MER 10 panel, he was super nice and talking about, International Space University and all kinds of opportunities and just some advice to kind of give to me. So he was a huge help and has continued to be a good friend since then. And even through Space Camp, meeting some people, even some people that you guys have already here in HASSE, like Andrea Hansen. She's a good friend of ours that we see over at Space Camp all the time. So it's really awesome to just kind of be in such a nice network.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that. That's one of the things that I wanted to really point out, that we here at HASSE really believe in, connecting and networking with those people who could really help you and inspire you and, even maybe nudge you slightly into the correct direction of pursuing those careers. And this is basically what we're trying to do here. Unfortunately, with the epidemic of coronavirus and us not being able to bring students to the States. And even you, right, being in the States, you cannot really travel at the moment. So the inability to travel and the inability to basically attend all of these camps makes it really hard for people to stay motivated and to stay, inspired to pursue all of their dreams. Would you say that perhaps online courses such as this or, others could be a worthy substitute?
Yeah, definitely right now is absolutely something insane, something that, we're all kind of through it together. We're all experiencing it for the first time together. We're all just trying to make the most of it. And so I do think that the way to do that is for all of us to stay connected as best as we can. And of course, doing either different courses online or staying connected online or anything like that is going to be the best way to kind of continue learning right now, continuing to have experiences, build memories, all kinds of fun activities just like that. So we can do our best and, continue building our stuff online. So many kids have done online school now, and I think doing, something like what HASSE is doing with their school here online is going to be such a cool replacement to like what is actually going on or what would have been going on But yeah, I definitely think that it is kind of our best way right now to stay connected. And, you know, if you were an astronaut on a mission to Mars, it would be how you would be connecting back to Earth. So you can always just pretend you're in a Mars simulation.
That's true. That's an excellent point. So all of our viewers today, you can just pretend that Alyssa is actually, in fact, in space already and not on planet Earth anymore. And you're just talking to her directly to the ISS. Thank you, Alyssa, for that. I really love that acknowledgement. Now, I would like to ask you a follow-up question. So you being a full-time student in a university and, you know, not being able to go to classes and having to take online classes sounds like quite a difficulty. How do you motivate yourself when you face difficulties or when you come across, you know, a path where you don't really know what to do anymore? How do you keep yourself motivated? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, definitely motivation is something that everyone struggles with. Everyone has had days when, you know, they just don't feel like doing that certain piece of work. And, you know, it's something that everyone goes through. So yeah, so like I finished like my spring semester online, and then I'm also even doing a couple summer courses that I'm also doing online. So I'm definitely, you know, since moving kind of back home to finish my school and all online, I've been trying to kind of stay more organized, maybe even more organized than I would have at school, just to make sure I kind of stay on top of things. So I actually have like physical calendar that I have everything laid out. So that way I know like, okay, today I have to do this and get everything just kind of done. But yeah, I think a good thing to kind of keep in mind is while we're staying home, it's important to, you know, continue to get a few things done, you know, even if it's not a whole lot every single day, even accomplishing, you know, one task, one assignment, whatever it may be, attending one webinar is actually, you know, really beneficial for you to actually have something to look forward to, feeling accomplished. And so I think that's kind of a big aspect of it as well, is wanting to, you know, get something productive out of the day, get something beneficial out of everything that's going on.
Oh yeah, that's true. I do believe in that, you know, making even a small little thing that sounds kind of insignificant can still, you know, make you feel less stressed probably and, you know, accomplished for the day. And, you know, it's just baby steps, one after another. Speaking of stress, would you say that your line of work brings a lot of it? And if so, how do you handle it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I would say, you know, this career definitely isn't the easiest path. I mean, even schooling and stuff, you're going to take pretty difficult classes, which obviously can bring on a level of stress. I think even just in general, almost like levels of fear could get in the way. You know, some of like the different trainings I've done have been, you know, jumping off platforms and all those kinds of crazy things that might bring on that level of fear. So I definitely think it's all about just kind of hitting it straight on, just going for it. Definitely stress is something that in your way. So it's always important to kind of take a moment to kind of ground yourself and realize, you know, go back and think like why you're doing it, what your goal is, what is actually going to come out of all the hard work you're putting in. You know, especially in school, you know, you're not necessarily doing all of this work for nothing. It is going to be beneficial and is going to outcome for something. So I definitely think that looking towards the future and just kind of remembering what is coming is kind of super helpful. I think, you know, for me, it's super motivational knowing all the crazy things that could happen in the near future, especially talking within the space program. You know, it's such an interesting time. So much stuff is changing with the private sector. SpaceX, you know, looking to bring people back from American soil. All these exciting things are kind of happening right now in the space program. So I think that, you know, since that's kind of my interest, that kind of motivates me because I know how successful we will continue to be in the space program, and I look forward to being a part of that.
That's true. Speaking of the SpaceX and you know, private space travel, many of our attendees today, they have mentioned that they're looking forward to the 27th of May, right? The first American launch in how many? What is it? 9 years since? What do you think about it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely insane to think. You know, I feel like so many people have been waiting for this, kind of mentally preparing for this moment. Definitely when the shuttle program ended, it was definitely just kind of a hit to most Americans, just because I feel like there wasn't necessarily all that knowledge about what was coming next. And I'm glad to see that we're finally here for everyone to truly understand, hopefully now, what exactly all is coming next, and all the great things that we have coming in the future for the space program, with long-term of going back to the moon and Mars, but also kind of just bringing the space program more alive, I guess, through American soil, having more launches from Kennedy and all that. So I definitely think for people who are, I guess, are less attached to it, it's going to kind of bring that love for space and that excitement for space back to everyone.
True. I feel like there's a lot of excitement, especially building up, and not just, for scientists or people like us as students, aspiring scientists, engineers and such, but even I've heard that there will be even a movie being shot in the ISS station. I believe Tom Cruise was supposed to go in space at some point. I'm not sure if you've heard of that as well, but that sounds like a really juicy kind of space gossip. Some of our attendees have also briefly mentioned. So what do you think with basically privatizing space travel, or being able to now have private companies that would start sending people to space? Do you think that that is something that will happen anytime soon? Like, for example, will the ordinary people like us be able to just buy a ticket and fly into the ISS and hang out there for a weekend? Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I think all of the exciting things about private sector space companies is going to be a pretty cool game changer for the space program. I think kind of the most exciting, we eventually will get to the point of more people from the public are going to space, but I think even more exciting than that, since we have kind of these added companies who are working in the space industry, we now have so many more space jobs. We're going to have so many more people going to space, working for space, being involved in space somehow. And so it's kind of cool to kind of see all these people all of a sudden coming and working in the space industry. So it's kind of, a very exciting time. And I do think that, getting normal people into space, possibly, either a trip up into space for a few hours or International Space Station, whatever it might be, I do think that it's coming pretty fast at the moment. I mean, like Virgin Galactic working pretty hard to kind of get to that point of more space tourism. So I do think that we're getting close. So hopefully, we'll see something pretty cool in the future for, an average person to be traveling to space.
Yes, well, hopefully so for all of us. You probably will, you surely will. But most of us might not get a chance unless we really buy a ticket to one of those rides. Now, as we've already mentioned many times, you are really moving towards, becoming an astronaut. And as soon as maybe there will be flights to Mars, you are quite possibly one of the first people who will have a chance to step foot on Mars. And you even wrote a book about it. Would you like to tell us something more about it? What inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, so the book is called So You Want to Be an Astronaut. The book is very focused on mainly just helping people kind of figure out how they can not only just become an astronaut, but also just kind of follow their dream in general. Because I definitely do think that, if you are interested in an astronaut, it's kind of like a personal path that you kind of have to take, because it's, like I said, you kind of have to figure out what career path you want to go down. There's no one thing I can tell you to do that will actually get you to become an astronaut. There's about a million different paths you can take to actually succeed in that. So I definitely think it all starts kind of with you and what you're interested in doing and what you actually want to pursue as a career. So it kind of can help in leading people down that path of actually working them through the process of figuring out what they want to do, what they can do with that, and how to actually continue following that dream, some resources as well. But definitely can relate to not only wanting to become an astronaut, but also any dream in general. It definitely is a guide of like, yes, this is my goal. This is what I should continue to do. Here's some things to think about when you're looking at following your dreams. So it's kind of just like a simple guide to kind of help you follow your own dreams, kind of similar to what I've done.
Mm-hmm. So it's all from your personal experience.
Right, yeah. So there's a lot of tips in there. Like I said, some resources, some advice along the way. I mean, definitely I related back to, my story and like my dream of being an astronaut from my experience, but definitely everything, all the advice and stuff can be related to any career as well. But I kind of give examples and advice based on what I've done so far.
Excellent. I can just see in our chat section that many of our attendees are saying that they would like the book. And I just want to remind all of you that you actually have a chance to win. Actually, this book, signed by Alyssa, there will be 3 lucky ones of you who, based on your questions, you will be able to win the book. Alyssa will choose the lucky winners at the very end of this webinar, so stay tuned. Do not go anywhere, even after we finish talking. But just to remind you, do not ask questions in the chat. Ask questions in the Q&A section. And if you see a question that has already been asked, do not ask it again, but instead just upvote it, because the higher the question is on our list, the more chances there are that Alyssa will actually get a chance to answer it. So just a quick reminder for all of our audience. So for those of you who want the book, think of original, interesting, funny, perhaps really inspirational questions you would like to ask Alyssa. And based on those, she will choose 3 lucky winners of her book with her autograph. Now, I'm sorry for that little break. Now, Alyssa, back to you. When did you write the book? Is that a recent book? Did you just come out?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty recent. It's not too old. Trying to remember exactly. I want to say either last year or like towards the end or later part of 2018, but I'm pretty sure it was last year is like when it actually got released. So yeah, it's a relatively new release. And so yeah, just been trying to kind of, get more people interested and wanting to see it, to hopefully help and inspire more people to follow their dreams.
Excellent. You also do a lot of speeches. Is that true? Because you were also one of our panelists during our last HASSE Space School. That was in January. We met in January. We had a large crowd of students from all over the world. And you even spoke Spanish to them, if you remember correctly. So that means you also speak Spanish, and quite well, I must add.
Yeah, I mean, definitely speaking is a big part of what I do as well. I first got into speaking kind of just to spill the space history facts that I knew originally, and then also with the shuttle program ending, I was trying to, advocate for possible missions to Mars, kind of get people understanding that it is a possibility. And so that's kind of just what got me started. And then, yeah, as I kind of continue with that, I started to enjoy speaking to kids even more, and I started loving it more and more, and being able to actually connect with students and inspire them was super awesome. So being able, kind of any chance that I can get, to actually go out and speak with kids and possibly, tell them the possible career paths they can go down, and tell them a little bit about space. It takes tens of thousands of people to send one astronaut into space. So trying to inspire those tens of thousands of kids to kind of grow up and fall into those space careers now.
Excellent. That sounds lovely. I remember just how much our students loved you. Many of them positively obsessed with you. I know that for a fact. I'm bet that they are all watching you today. So again, thank you for joining us. It's a great honor and pleasure. We have such great feedback. And yes, many of our students are even saying that your Spanish is amazing. When did you learn Spanish, or how did you decide to learn Spanish? Was that something that you decided to do for the career, or just for yourself?
I mean, so growing up, I went to a international immersion school. So basically, from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, I took basically my subjects in 4 different languages, Spanish being one of them. And we had people from all over the world kind of teaching the languages. So if you were speaking Spanish, you would be from a Spanish-speaking country. So we basically were fully immersed in the language, the culture, everything about it. And so kind of doing that for however many years, like 13 years, you kind of eventually become pretty fluent in it. So definitely French and Spanish are my 2 strongest. But yeah, it was definitely a very unique school and unique experience to kind of go through. But yeah, I'm super thankful for my languages, just because I absolutely love being able to connect with people in their own language. I definitely think it's such a unique connection between people. And so with all the traveling that I've done, it has definitely been helpful.
Excellent. Would you mind saying a few, perhaps, words or phrases in those languages that you speak? I believe our audience would absolutely love that.
Hola, me llamo Alyssa Carson y desde como 3 años a mí me gusta español aprecio mucho y espero que ustedes también seguir sus sueños. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I can see many of our attendees just freaking out over your Spanish-speaking skill. I believe they absolutely love that, and it just brought them back to a time a few months ago when we actually all saw you speaking, basically having an entire speech in Spanish. And I feel like that was something that definitely hit really close to heart, many of our students, because it's let me put it this way: pursuing a career as an astronaut is a giant goal. And of course, many of our students would absolutely love to do that. However, not many of them have a chance. Perhaps their country doesn't even have a space program, such as, Chile. Some of our students were from Chile, and many of our attendees are today. They were really happy to, have somebody who actually can speak to them in their native language and tell them about what it basically entails to pursue this career, pursue this dream, and you speaking to them in their language. I feel like that meant to them even more so than if you spoke in English. So again, I would like to thank you for that. It's really amazing what you do and how you manage to inspire all of those students. Do you often interact with them? Do you interact with your fans much? Is that something that you like to do?
Yeah, I mean, totally. Definitely. I mean, the biggest and most important thing of all of this is being able to reach as many people as possible, being able to inspire as many people and help as many people follow their dreams and kind of help them along that way. So, yeah, being able to offer any advice that I can. I mean, obviously, a big kind of push behind the book was that, I would get so many messages about how to be an astronaut, which sometimes can be super difficult to kind of detail the whole experience of like telling that you have to kind of decide what you want to do. So that was kind of the idea behind the book, is kind of to reach and help more people. But besides that, I guess, basic question, yeah, there's definitely been people along the way who have kind of tried to help, and even just answering any simple thank yous or whatever is always super important, I think. So hopefully along that, and even replying in different languages as well, all the same, just trying to inspire as many kids as I can.
Excellent, and thank you so much for that. I can see so much response from all of our attendees. They definitely are inspired, if anything else. Now, you already accomplished so much, and you still probably have so many other things you would like to accomplish. What is your plan for the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years? What would be your immediate goals and your little, maybe long-term goals?
Yeah, well, I mean, right now, definitely most of the next few years is mainly going to be, just in school as I continue my degree. I mean, at the same time, there's a few other things, I want to do while in school, getting involved in, some kind of project, as well as continuing my flying experience. So, for example, I have my private pilot's license, but I want to kind of continue get the next rating, which would be a instrument rating. So just kind of get more experience with flying, kind of, I guess, a few more levels of experience in the different areas and skills that I have. So possibly even, scuba diving, going and getting, another certification within that. So those kinds of little things are kind of the next on my agenda. But definitely kind of long term is really just kind of completing school and hopefully seeing either internships or any projects that I can involved with would definitely be the ultimate goal.
Excellent. You've mentioned pilot license and scuba diving. Those are some things that maybe many people don't associate with, astronauting. Would you elaborate? What's the flight license for, and what about scuba diving? How is that related to being an astronaut?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so kind of the path that I've kind of chosen to go down, and the path that I'm kind of interested in pursuing is definitely being more of kind of a research scientist. So I wouldn't necessarily be, a pilot or anything like that on the mission. However, it is important to have some sort of flight experience, even if it's, small planes or, any sort of experience will be helpful, because, when you're looking at a mission to Mars, you can only have so many people. Although you will have your specific role, is important to kind of be able to have all the skills of all the different skill sets. And so kind of each person will have a little flight experience, a little medical experience, but you'll have your main focus. And so that's kind of why I started pursuing my pilot's license, just to get a little flight experience. I ended up loving it so much kind of after that. So it was definitely not too hard to continue working in and being fully in love with it. So definitely kind of caught onto that. And then as well as scuba diving, scuba diving and being underwater, kind of the best we can do for long-term simulation of microgravity. Kind of, it's when you're in a pool, you can kind of lift up your friends and throw them around a little more easier than you could just do on the surface. And so that's kind of the best we have. And then also just in general, getting comfortable with having like your own system. When you're scuba diving, you have a tank of oxygen. That's the oxygen you have. You don't have any more than that. And, you have to time out everything. And it's the same way in space. You're going to, if you leave and go out into the vacuum of space, you're only going to have so much time of oxygen, having to be used to breathing off of something. And so it just kind of builds those very kind of like basic skill sets that you could potentially be using in the future, and just kind of getting used to that. And like I said, just possible, simulations of microgravity to the best that we can do here on Earth.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've mentioned all of these different aspects of training. That sounds like putting yourself into very uncomfortable positions, such as, simulating microgravity or diving, and, you have a very limited amount of time and you need to complete a specific task. That sounds like you need to really get used to being uncomfortable, or like getting yourself to be comfortable in really uncomfortable situations. Would you say that any part of the training was specifically hard or scary? Was there something that you did that you really didn't want to do, but you had to pass nevertheless?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's been loads of stuff that is not necessarily the most comfortable or the most, I guess, enjoyable in the moment. I mean, definitely, for example, getting my scuba diving certification, I remember one of my dives, it was like the middle of April and it was freezing cold, absolutely freezing, and just kind of getting yourself to kind of get in that water and go and do the dive and kind of complete everything. It's definitely some uncomfortable situations, and even, some water survival training that I've done has been pretty physical and pretty, I guess, hardcore, I would say. Definitely, learning to blow up a life raft, pull yourself into one, wear a spacesuit, and then also pull yourself into a life raft, being able to swim in a spacesuit. All of these kinds of crazy things have been, I would say, pretty intense for the most part. But I do think that at the same time, I am exposed to some of these, I guess, relatively uncomfortable situations, but I do think that it is loads of fun to kind of be in that and, build those experiences, build those skills. So yeah, overall, it has been pretty fun, even though some stuff hasn't been the absolute greatest, I suppose.
Now, when you decided to become an astronaut, or you set your mind to it at such a young age, do you think you had an idea about the entire scope of the things that you will have to put yourself through to reach that goal? Because you decided really early on, when you ask a 3-year-old what they want to be, usually girls would say they want to be princesses, and boys would say they want to be, well, maybe astronauts or, kings or something really silly. But you had a really specific job choice, basically, at such a young age. Do you think when you thought that, you were mentally prepared, or you had any idea what it would actually entail being an astronaut?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when I first got interested, yeah, there really wasn't an idea as to like how intense it would be or exactly what I would be doing. I mean, obviously, going to space camp kind of gave me a little bit more of an idea of, what going into a scientific career or being an astronaut could look like. But yeah, as I've gotten older, it's definitely kind of developed into really understanding what it means to be an astronaut, and also, the importance of, choosing that career and kind of laying down that foundation. But, also all of these crazy experiences that I've had, flights, and like I was saying with the water survival training, those are definitely things I never pictured myself doing or would have that I would have done. And so definitely, it's kind of been, a shock to see all of these cool things that can actually help preparing to go and possibly be an astronaut and all the different skills that you can learn. But yeah, I definitely wasn't prepared for it in the beginning, but I am so glad that it all happened the way it did, just because they have been absolutely unique experience. I'm so glad to have.
It sounds amazing. Just one more thing about that. Do you even remember what was the first impulse that, put that idea in your head? Oh, astronaut, that sounds like a cool job. I would like to be that one day.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, obviously, I don't remember all of my 3-year-old thoughts necessarily too intensely, or even, of when I was young. In general, kind of the best guess as to what me and my dad think could have done it is Backyardigans, just because we know that they into our episode at some point. So that's kind of the best guess. My dad really just remembers me coming and asking questions about Mars sometime when I was little. And then I had the poster for the mission to Mars, the Backyardigans episode, hung up in my bedroom. So one day we were like, maybe that is it. But really, no one in my family had a science or space career. So it's not like we were ever mentioning space or Mars. So for me to come and start asking questions about it was definitely bizarre. So that's kind of why it is our best guess. But yeah, we really don't entirely know.
Well, you're working towards becoming, one of the first people to perhaps step foot on Mars. I know Mars is like the next big frontier, but to a young child that you were when you decided to pursue this, didn't Mars seem like a really inhabitable, really difficult place to kind of travel to? Like the conditions on Mars are probably not really welcoming to humans.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's crazy to kind of think about how all this has emerged. I mean, definitely when I was little, saying I wanted to become an astronaut and kind of get involved in this and go to Mars. At that time, Mars wasn't necessarily what we were looking at that time. It wasn't the top of the radar at that moment. It was going to the International Space Station. We were still in the shuttle program, kind of towards the tail end of things. But, at that time, Mars wasn't really the main focus. Yet, I still had, my hopes of going to Mars. But it's crazy to see how it's kind of progressed, because the more I've worked towards the dream, the more of a reality has really become the way the space program has kind of emerged. So it has been really cool to kind of see that process come about. Obviously, like you said, Mars is not the most friendly and habitable place that we have right now, but it is super cool to see how technology has developed along with that to kind of make it possible for us to even live there in a habitat, or be in spacesuits, being able to walk on Mars. So I definitely think it's going to be really cool, and to prove that, humans have done something as crazy as go to another planet, and we have that, incredible technology that so many people have been working on and continue to work on every day to be able to push our own boundaries of exploration.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there some kind of a timeline for that? Is there at least a ballpark of when do we think we would be able to perhaps send first people, and hopefully you included, to Mars?
Right. So, I mean, definitely the timeline right now is looking for missions to Mars to be possibly in the early 2030s is the goal. 2033 is sometime around that time. NASA has recently talked about their Artemis program and all the stuff that they're doing right now, and continuing to build the SLS Space Launch System rocket. So currently the goals would be to go back to the moon and then on to Mars. So those goals for this for these missions to Mars definitely have changed over the years and continue to change up to this point. But yeah, definitely, I think right now we're still pretty on track, I would say, for getting to Mars in the early 2030s. I know there are, people working so hard every single day to make that year a possibility and make that timeline a reality. And so it's so amazing to see the work being put into it. I know, I recently visited Michoud down in New Orleans, which is not too far from me, and they have been working on like the center core, the long center core for the SLS rocket, and being able to meet so many people that worked on the project, and seeing how hard they pushed to get that first one out, and they're already working on the second one, and it's just crazy to see how quickly everything is going, how much work is being put into it.
Definitely, considering that you might be one of the first people to actually sit in that rocket and, off to space you go. That sounds great. And also that you have this
Right.
opportunity to go and, interact with those people. I feel like that probably brings you a whole lot of comfort. Is that a correct word to use, perhaps? Knowing that, you would be in good hands once you get up in there. You're supported by true experts in their fields and people who really work incredibly hard towards achieving all of our common goal. It's not just, NASA's goal or just yours or mine. It's everybody else's too. So I feel like that should be a really great feeling to be part of such a large community of people working so hard towards achieving that common goal.
Right. I mean, definitely, I feel like a lot of people are kind of overwhelmed by space a little bit with all the dangers that we kind of see immediately. People may get, terrified of radiation and all of the different crazy temperatures of space and all of this, but I definitely think the space program has done such an excellent job at keeping the astronauts as safe as we can possibly get them. So much time and so much safety goes into every single build that happens, and so if you meet one person or talk to anyone who works anywhere in the space industry, automatically see their passion for it. You can all automatically see how important safety is for it. And I think that is one of the really cool aspects of this career path and, space careers in general is just how passionate everyone is about it. Everyone loves what they're doing.
That's amazing. I hope that we can all find this kind of passion and, work towards together, working towards achieving that giant goal that we set for ourselves and for the rest of humanity. That's excellent. I have last question for you before we can move on to further on in our program and Q&A session. That would be after you do achieve that goal. So let's say in 2033, you do successfully get to be one of the first people to step foot on Mars. What would be your personal goal for afterwards? What would you, once you check that off your bucket list, what would you still like to achieve in your lifetime?
Yeah, so definitely the mission to Mars is going to be obviously the mission to space that I hope to be a part of. So after the mission to Mars, I wouldn't necessarily look towards going back to space again, most likely just because of all the time that the mission to Mars will probably put on my body, and like losing muscle strength and bone density and all those things. So I wouldn't necessarily go back to space. So I kind of retire as an astronaut. I definitely would be interested in being a part of continuing to do some research with the stuff we get back. So continuing to do experiments or help out any way I can to kind of, continue to contribute for anything that may have come from the mission. At the same time, I'll probably continue doing some speaking as well, I can kind of imagine. But besides that, it's mainly just going to be continuing to work, I guess, in my profession, which would be astrobiology, and just kind of continuing to, just kind of contribute anyway, and hopefully inspire even more kids and continue to inspire even after the mission.
Oh, I'm sure you have. And not just today, but throughout all these years when you have been speaking and attending all these seminars, I'm sure you've inspired many a child and young adults to hopefully, one day follow in your footsteps. And for that, perhaps getting and reading your book could be one of the, manuals. It's like a cheat sheet of sorts that students could in some way follow, perhaps to, hopefully one day becoming another Alyssa Carson. Okay. Great. So I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. We've had some issues here on our end, but they seem to be resolved now. So let's get back to it. We have so many questions here. Many of them have been upvoted. So let's see. Hamza has asked about GSCES or degrees that you need to become an astronaut. So would you say that there is a specific degree you need to become an astronaut?
I mean, definitely there is not one degree that you have to become an astronaut. So kind of the requirements is a bachelor's degree in any type of STEM career. So you can study any sort of science, math, engineering, technology, kind of anything under the STEM umbrella. So that includes so many different career opportunities, as well as you don't even have to study a STEM degree. You can also be a pilot as well. And so with that, they have a requirement of like the minimum number of hours you have to have flown. But yeah, those are kind of the two main ways that you apply to be an astronaut. But again, there's not one degree you need. It's kind of just whatever you're interested in. When one to become an astronaut, you have to find what you want to do and then see how you can relate to space afterward.
Did you hear the question?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, let me say it one more time. So we had Emiliano asking about your learning progress or process, because learning or becoming an astronaut includes learning a lot of difficult and mastering many of the difficult things. So how do you handle learning all these crazy hard things?
Yeah, I mean, definitely is not always the easiest, I guess, curriculum. A lot of it is, kind of all chemistries, all physics, all biologies, all maths you kind of think of. So definitely they are challenging. It is pretty cool, though, to know that these are, information that, you could possibly use one day in like a future career. So you do know that they are important and that it is important to retain them. So yeah, it's mainly just staying as focused as you can on schooling, really trying to understand the information, but also another huge thing is really just being able to ask for help when you need it or when you don't understand something. So going to all the resource centers, asking for all the help is super important to kind of really understand these crazy concepts that are really difficult to learn at first. But I definitely think that, being able to ask for help and really try to work as hard as you can on it kind of gets it to where, it'll eventually become easier.
Sophia is curious about the biggest sacrifice you've had to make to pursue your dreams.
Yeah, I mean, definitely growing up, I would do a whole lot of traveling. So, I mean, there were like some little things that I missed at school, like a carnival or, little things like that. I mean, I definitely had to miss out on some things. I don't necessarily think that I missed out on anything that was super important. I definitely, if there was something school related that I really wanted to do, we kind of just made it work. And so I definitely think that it was all about choosing what was right in the moment. Sometimes if there was a choice to go and travel, or if there was, kind of, I guess, your basic teenager thing or whatever, it was just all about choosing what was right at that time and what was the most important. So I definitely do think that there has been some stuff that I've sacrificed along the way. Also, just putting so much time into this in general, but I definitely think that it was all totally worth it.
Something you would regret getting through the training and missing the carnival at your high school. It's probably better to do the other thing around. And now Vicenta is asking about whether or not you have any hobbies that are not related to science, because we know that you do many things related to science on a daily basis, but do you have any hobbies that are in no way related to science?
Yeah, totally. I mean, growing up, I played competitive soccer or football, since some of you are from obviously other countries. But yeah, soccer was a big part of my life. Like I said, playing it for 10 years was definitely pretty consuming. I did, competitive, and then I started doing slightly less competitive and just for fun. Also doing piano. I did dance when I was younger, but kind of grew out of that. I mean, to this day, there are, if I'm just relaxing, I'm a big Netflix watcher. I love Netflix, or even, painting or, whatever it might be. I love doing little projects. So definitely fill my time with stuff other than just space.
That's actually great to know as well. Now, having gone through all of this, if you reflect on your journey, is there anything you would have done differently? And if so, why?
I mean, looking back, obviously, there's been some stuff that necessarily hasn't been the most beneficial at the time, but I definitely don't necessarily regret anything that I've done so far. I've definitely loved all the experiences I've gotten to do. It's been so much fun to be able to kind of continue building all that's kind of happened so far, and just kind of build my skill set and continue to do more interesting trainings. So like I said, I've really enjoyed everything that I've done. There isn't necessarily one thing that like sticks out that was really terrible or that I wouldn't have done. I definitely, kind of along the way, there's been stuff that like I almost stopped doing, but I'm really glad that I continued to do it. So for example, flying was a big one. At the, my first few flights, I really wanted to quit, and I wasn't really that interested in flying. And I didn't really think it was going to work out, but I ended up absolutely loving it. So there has been some things that I almost kind of gave up that I am really glad that I didn't.
Great. And follow-up question from Joanne. What's the hardest hurdle you've experienced through achieving your dream? So there were many different. What was the hardest one?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely one of the hardest things that going through so far has definitely just been time management, balancing school at the same time as all of this, trying to keep school as the most important, because without it, obviously I can't reach where I want to go. But at the same time, definitely just being the youngest at a lot of things and just trying to push those boundaries. So really push for, being or getting younger kids allowed to do more things, or, just kind of pushing that idea that I guess, teenagers aren't able to do some of these pretty incredible things. So really just working hard to have and let people realize that teenagers are capable of doing some of these pretty crazy things. And yeah, just kind of getting that exposure out there, and, really surprising people at what can actually be done even when you're young.
That's true. That's true. Many things we can probably do at a really young age as well. Another one of the questions from our viewer, Tim Ho Curtis Leo, is whether you've tried space food, and if so, which one is your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, so definitely I've tried some stuff. I mean, I've tried like astronaut ice cream, which they sell in gift shops, which obviously is not directly what the astronauts eat up in space. I've also, I used to eat like so regularly that I think they would sell it at like space centers, but they would basically have like this peanut butter stick. So it was like this stick thing of peanut butter, but I would like eat it as a snack, and I used to eat that all the time. I had like a little astronaut on the package. But I mean, honestly, space food nowadays is so similar to food down here. I mean, astronauts up in space and up on the International Space Station, they'll have mac and cheese and PB&J tortillas and all kinds of stuff like that. So for the most part, it's not too different. It's not quite the like the toothpaste tubes that the astronauts used to have to eat.
A little better by now too. With all the technology and science that we put into space programs, I would hope that the food would taste better than toothpaste. Now, Chia Shinu has a question about a role of space medical doctors to astronauts. Do you think that these are really important or helpful for the astronauts?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the whole field of medicine in general is obviously super important in the space industry. Obviously, we have to have someone with a lot of medical experience on the mission, just in case anything happens. Like I said before, I mean, obviously, everyone will have some degree of medical experience. But definitely just staying and having kind of someone who is kind of a medical officer will be super important. Obviously, all the astronauts have to stay in the best health as possible, and also just in general, studying the effects of space on the body has been super huge in studying space physiology. And so that is another big part of what a lot of kind of more of the medical astronauts kind of work in, and that's kind of the region that they really contribute to, is really understanding more about us and how we can spend longer in space, or what is kind of our boundaries, how we can push that. And so, yeah, it's super important to be able to study all areas of science, including medicine, and, even trying to, create new types of medicine in space while being in like a zero gravity environment. There's all kinds of interesting stuff going on in the medical field that's going on up in space.
For that, and I have perhaps a last question we have a time for, and that comes from Simsar, and the question is, what would be the first message to the world from Mars? So once you step foot on a Mars, do you have a phrase prepared that you would like to say once you step your foot on the Mars soil?
I mean, there's not necessarily something that I have planned out already. I'm not quite sure how I could, I don't know. I don't really know of anything right now that would just be this perfect, like, really intense sentence that's going to mean so much to so many people. So hopefully, you know, if the time comes when we're on Mars, hopefully I'll have something figured out. But as of right now, I'm not entirely sure what would be the most appropriate and like significant thing to say. But it is pretty crazy to have people such as like Neil Armstrong set so I guess kind of a high standard for what we should say when we first get there.
Think about that. So hopefully you will be able to come up with the right answer. Until then, I think that kind of concludes our Q&A session. But we still have the 3 books that 3 lucky of you guys can win. So Alyssa, if you can see the Q&A part on your right-hand side, would you mind maybe scrolling and choosing 3 of the lucky winners of your autographed book?
Yes. Okay. I will pick them.
So drum roll, everybody.
Oh goodness. Okay. Every time I like look up, it, like goes down because you guys keep typing. That's so funny. Okay, so the first winner is going to be Alejandro Puentes. Guess. Oh goodness, I was going to read what he asked as the question. Like, oh, here we go. What is your opinion on the Artemis program, and would you like to participate in it? I definitely think that the Artemis program is super exciting to be bringing into the future, and going to be super exciting to see new missions kind of come and arise in the space program. So I'm excited to see what all is going to come of it. The next winner is going to be oh Lord. Okay. Let's see. Let's do Camila Arredondo is how you pronounce her last name. I'm really sorry if that's wrong, but that would be my best guess. She asked, do you know any other languages? Yeah, just speaking a little Spanish on this earlier. But languages is something that could be really useful in the space program. So it's really awesome to ask and really be aware of all the different skill sets that could possibly be helpful in the space program. You never know what skills really could be useful. So possibly knowing other languages could be pretty cool. And then our last winner is going to be, oh gosh, you guys make this so difficult and like jotting it down. Okay, so our last winner is going to be, let's see. Francisca Sanita. Oh, your last name was cut off, but it starts Paul. I can't see the end of the last name. But the question is, how does fulfilling your dreams since childhood make you feel? I definitely think it's super important for you guys to focus on what you're passionate about and really continue to pursue those. So I absolutely love being able to continue to work on something that is really dear and passionate to my heart. So I really hope that you guys can have that same experience and continue to work on something that you guys enjoy. So congratulations, Francisca. Thank you so much for that question. And yeah, you guys really continue to follow your own dreams, and congratulations to those winners.
Well, again, so to those 3 lucky of you, Alejandro, Camila, and Francisca, please stay tuned. Do not go anywhere. Our staff will contact you afterwards with figuring out the logistics of how we can get Alyssa autographed books to you. Now, to the rest of you, thank you so much for sending in your questions. There were so many great questions. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to answer all of them, but I hope that this only motivates you to, further pursue being this curious and showing interest in something that you would perhaps one day like to do as your job or find as your future career. So please do not go anywhere. A little spoiler alert, as I already mentioned earlier. In 2 weeks' time, we will have Dr. Leroy Chao as our next guest at this HASSE motivational webinar. So Dr. Chao will tell us something more about the future of space travel. He is working very closely with SpaceX that we have brought up earlier. So if you're interested, you can click, or you can actually scan the QR code. Alyssa, do you mind if we say goodbye together?
Yeah, thank you guys. Yes. Sure,
I know that in space-related programs, they do a little countdown. So should we count to 3 and say goodbye together?
Sure.
Excellent. So thank you all guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you again, Alyssa. And on 3, 2, 1. Goodbye.